Boeing will be asking for tens of billions of dollars in government aid. This coming as Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin called this crisis, quote, worse than 9/11 for the airline industry. Joining us right now to talk about it is Seth Kaplan, principal at Kaplan Research. Good morning to you, Seth. Let's talk about the need for these bailouts, what happens to these airlines. Greg Ip in the last hour suggested that unemployment in this country just on travel alone would go from 3.5% to 6%.
Right, that just the travel-related job losses would drive the overall employment rate up to 6%. This, as everybody has said, is worse than 9/11 in a lot of ways. And we do have to sort of try to put ourselves back in that mindset. It's easy now to say, well, the thing about 9/11 is that awful first day was the worst day, and then there was recovery. We know that now. We didn't know that when we were in the middle of that. Remarkable that these airlines, 9/11 happened on a Tuesday. By that Saturday, they were laying off tens of thousands of people. 75,000 U.S. airline jobs were gone within a few weeks. This time, these giant airlines haven't laid off anybody in terms of direct employees yet. So that speaks to the position they were in going into this thing. But obviously, throw out the window.
Seth, what's the run rate? Can you just speak to the run rate in terms of employment costs? If the goal is to keep people employed, to keep people on payrolls across the country, and this is in all businesses, but specifically in the airline business, where we could just take a Delta or an American Airlines as an example.
To pay people to
stay at home, frankly,
to do nothing.
Yes.
So for the U.S. industry, I'm just trying to do quick math. Delta does a $6 billion profit on $40 billion in revenue and something. I mean, it's up for the industry. I mean, $60, $70, $80 billion or something if you're just paying salaries
annually
for the U.S. Yeah, I mean that's very, very, very bad. But anyway, it's not $5 billion and it's not $500 billion. I mean that's just very, very roughly. Yeah. So that's and that might be part of the grand bargain here, and that might be part of why. I mean, at some point, look, people running airlines have this fiduciary responsibility to everybody to save the company. But in terms of why they are still paying people to do nothing, that might be the leverage here, because they know there are people out there saying, this industry earned tens of billions of dollars in profits last year.
Well, this becomes the question. Long term, if there is a targeted bailout, and this goes to whether you want to do a targeted bailout or nationwide bailout. If you do a targeted bailout at the airline industry, by default, you're going to determine they're common carriers. That's what's going to happen, right? Yeah. And therefore, you're going to have to put some forms of other regulation on them. Forget about buybacks. It's going to be about building this remarkable insurance cushion over the years, and it would change the entire dynamic of the industry. I'm not suggesting that's the wrong thing to do. I just suggest that's the political thing. If this is the path they're going to go down.
Especially because, I mean, as Greg was talking earlier about how this just impacts absolutely everybody. I mean, this is, the idea of too big to fail. The problem is that it's not a redistribution anymore, right? Because everybody's in the same situation. So if we're going to say that this industry is special, even though, the guy at the Greek deli in my neighborhood is feeling it just as badly, then yeah, it's reasonable to say. And you've got the unions saying that, of course, unions representing flight attendants, pilots, and others that should be tied to it, and so you can understand.
So Seth, right now, Delta is worth something on the order of $20 billion. Does that make sense to you? Is that a bet that investors are going to be bailed out by taxpayers? Is that what's happening here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's baked in. That's what's all the usual granular stuff. Obviously, nobody could look at now, but no, I mean, I think at this point, we know what the airlines have asked for: $50 billion, $25 billion in grants, $25 billion in loans, and yeah, I mean, I think at this point that's the expectation. That
hey,
they're
Seth,
gonna get
hang on, we got Becky who's got a question for you.
Hey, Becky.
Hey, if that's baked in, how come you're looking at some of those airlines down by another 10% this morning? My guess is investors are thinking, okay, the industry may get bailed out, but we're not sure what that means for shareholders yet.
For shareholders, no, exactly. And you've heard those calls out there that for shareholders to somehow get diluted by all this. But no, exactly. That's fair point. That's two separate questions. Jobs, and is there still something called American Airlines versus what does that mean for shareholders?
And therefore, the question I'd ask you, Seth, is if you're an investor out there today who actually owns these airline stocks, what are you even supposed to think?
Well, yeah,
and some people
that's,
say there's an opportunity that you should buy the stocks and bet that the government's going to save you and protect the shareholders. And others might say you need to get rid of this immediately because they're going to effectively nationalize the airlines when everything's done, and you're going to lose everything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of baby bathwater, what the right analogy is there. I think the industry legitimately reformed itself enough that's probably not what's going to happen here. But yeah, no, I mean, obviously, if you are still holding shares of these airlines, that's your bet that the industry is not going to be nationalized or something like that. That this is going to be, like the banks, just like, what happened there with the ratios and everything, that this is an industry that thought it had put itself in a position to get through absolutely anything. And, and it probably was in a position to get through absolutely anything except this. Right. And so that's your bet. I think if you're holding these now is that, yeah, it's going to look different. But they're not going to, but the equity is obviously not going to get wiped out if you believe.
Hey, Seth, thank you as always.